Hi Arthur, Mrs. Olson here. So what I've got pulled up is the section from Apex 2.2.2, the scientific revolution. And then I've also started a set of Cornell notes that I wrote on this section to kind of give you an idea and a guide of what needs to be written and where. So first of all, if I look at yours, you do have the essential question written down correctly, and oftentimes the essential question is found on the very first page, okay? So remember that with Cornell notes, you want to read every single page, and on this very first page of 2.2.2, it really is just an introduction to the rest of the chapter. So as far as historical information goes, there isn't too much to write down. So I'm going to go to the second page, and you've kind of already started doing some of that with the information that we see here. And that is to record information about the scientific method. So what I'm going to do is flip over to mine and show you that I have written the term scientific method here, and then I have stated it in and given each step of the process its own line, okay? And then I took what you wrote in this part right here and also included it, but I just put it at the bottom of the steps to kind of separate the two pieces of the same note. So moving on to the third page, at the very top of this one, it really is all about the hypothesis portion of the scientific method. So what I did is to write the term hypothesis and write it's the most important in the scientific method, and then I put a comma there, comes from ancient Greek. And that is pretty much a summary or the big ideas out of this first paragraph here. The second part is just giving us a scenario, so we don't need to write anything there. So going on to the fourth page, this is setting us up. These two paragraphs right here are introductory paragraphs that are setting us up for what we're going to find in the historical timeline. So I'm clicking OK, and then I'm going to pause this so that I don't talk over it. And coming out of this very first paragraph on the first date in the timeline, what I took out of it is that Greek is the primary language of science, and that educated people studied mostly the Bible. They really didn't study anything else because the church wasn't in favor of people studying anything other than the Bible. So one thing that I want to turn your attention to are these little dots or dialogue points. You can call them whatever you want. You always want to make sure that you put your mouse over it and you hover over the dot, because it's going to give you more information. And what I got out of this dot is that during feudal times, peasants did not have opportunities to be educated. Okay? So moving on with our theme and the timeline, I'm going to go to the next date and pause it again. So this is explaining what happened during the High Middle Ages, and it introduces us to a guy, a scientist, named Roger Bacon. Actually, he was more of a philosopher, but he is important to the scientific revolution. So again, putting our cursor over the dot, it tells us that he made a major contribution to the development of science, and what he did was to write to the Pope to say, hey, we need to study natural sciences in the university. So going back to our Cornell notes, I've written his name because we need to remember important people's names, and that he wrote to the Pope to encourage the study of natural science in universities. Okay, so here's my point with doing that, and I know it's a little bit fast, but what I want kids to do is to make sure that they read every single page and then pull the important pieces of information off of every single page and and record it in the right column. Okay, so you read the entire section in Apex, page for page, writing down information in the right column as you go. Okay, now when you're done filling up your pages, and let's see, this section in Apex has 19 pages, so you might even end up with 3 pages, probably 2, but if you go on to 3 pages, that is totally fine. So you've read all 19 pages, you have written down the important historical details in the right column, and the third step of Cornell Notes is to then fill in the left column. So looking at this cell, the main idea really is about the scientific revolution. And so that is the main idea that I am going to put in that cell. I'm going to leave this because it's about the hypothesis, or you could rewrite hypothesis if you wanted to. Okay. And then coming here, this was from our timeline. And remember that there were 2 more dates in there that is going to have information. So on your notes, this section might even be have a little bit more information in it. So the main idea from this section, which was through the interactive timeline on page 4, is really about feudalism and where the scientific revolution was started. So I might write something like Roman Catholic Church behind education. You could use the word scholarship, you could use the word learning, but the big idea here is that they had to get permission from the Roman Catholic Church to even continue with scholarship and learning. Hence comes in Roger Bacon. Okay? So, continuing on, for Roger Bacon, you've already written his name here, but maybe now you're going to write a question. And remember that the entire column should not be questions, but you want maybe a question or 2. And you could simply write, who influenced, and I'm going to abbreviate here, Roman Catholic Church to study science? And the answer would be Roger Bacon. So the idea with Cornell Notes is that it's making you dissect the entire section. And then, so dissecting the entire section, meaning that you read, you take all of your notes here, that's the dissection part. And then when you're done taking all of your notes, you are starting to use the information that you have written down and come up with main ideas, terms, and questions. So you're using this info to write this column here. And then, of course, when you are done doing both parts of Cornell Notes, the left and the right, then you write your summary. And you always want this to be what I call a chunky paragraph. So you want all of the big ideas in here. You don't want to rewrite the entire section, but you don't want 2 or 3 sentences. So a nice chunky paragraph that summarizes all of the big ideas from the section that you wrote on. Another idea with Cornell Notes, if you have a section that is like 19 pages, I always suggest for kids to do maybe like 4 or 5 pages at a time. Go get a drink of water, let your mind do something else for a few minutes, and then go back to it. Don't try to do all 19 pages in one sitting. Okay, well, Arthur, I hope that helps you understand how to do Cornell Notes a little bit better. If you have any questions, please let me know.